Alright guys, welcome back. We are now in the part in After Effects, and some of the things we're going to do now that we're in After Effects to kind of give this a little bit more life is the first thing we need to do is we need to bring in some nulls and cameras from Blender. We're going to export those into After Effects using the Blender AE add-on inside of Blender. And once we have that information, we're going to add some footage and some dust elements in the foreground, the background, to kind of make it look like there's some snow blowing off these mountains. And then maybe we add a little other elements like maybe a little bit of lens flares or sunlight to kind of, give us a little bit of glow on the side here. So let's go ahead and dive in. So this was just a test comp that I could see how everything's working. I'm going to go ahead and delete this composition because we don't need it. And we're going to go to the one that we've been building our tutorial in. You'll see all the layers are offline because I deleted this, but since we have an EXR and we already separated these out in a previous video, I'm just going to hold Alt, drag it down, replace all these layers, and we should get all of our layers back. We did leave a little bit of a deep glow on there. We don't actually probably want that. So let's go ahead and delete that. Our depth of field isn't looking too bad. I might just go ahead and drop that because we don't want that much depth of field. And because this is 720 frames, let's extend this all out. And we kind of start on this mountain, and we have a transition mountain here at the end. Let's make this 721 frames. Just get this last frame, make sure it's there. All right, there it is. Yep. So I kind of just want to end on this frame, start on this frame. And just a quick reminder, this is a video that was playing in the arena on the Jumbotron as well as a live stream. And this was just going to be our logo loop while other teams get ready to perform their routine. All right, so one other thing that we might need a little bit of is let's go ahead and do some motion blur. Let's just make sure all of our motion blur stuff is working all right. And I might just turn off some of these layers that we extracted earlier as samples to kind of start getting the compositing process going and getting these things looking a little bit better. So right here, to kind of blur this out, we need a little bit of motion blur. Two ways you can do this is using Real Smart Motion Blur, of course, or you can probably do the Force Motion Blur as well. I'm going to duplicate our background here. We'll call this Motion Vectors. And let me just solo this really quick. Instead of the combined composite here, we want to get our vector pass. And you'll see with the Open Color IO, we're kind of getting a weird look on this. We probably don't need this for a vector pass because we want this information in here. This is telling us what to blur out and where our motion blur is going to be. So let's make a new adjustment layer. We're going to use Pro Vectors for this from Real Smart Motion Blur. You don't have to use Real Smart Motion Blur or Pro Vectors. A couple of quick options you can use here is just a regular Real Smart Motion Blur, and you could keyframe this to kind of come in for this wipe or whatever you might need. You'll see it's not quite as accurate. It's always good to turn the stuff down, turn up the sensitivity, and this is a fast way to do this. I would probably do this normally. Let's just delete that. You could also try doing Force Motion Blur. I feel like I have mixed results with that sometimes. Or another motion blur is using Pixel Motion Blur. And as you can see, not as great. We can turn up the samples and get a little bit of that as well. But for this tutorial, anybody wondering how to use motion vectors, let's just go ahead and turn that on. Of course, we're not going to see anything. We need to select our motion vectors pass, which is layer 7. So let's go to our adjustment layer. We'll call this Mo Blur. Let's use our GPU. Gonna save really quick, and we're going to select our motion vectors. Right now it's on source. Like the other ones, let's change this to effects and masks. And you'll see it is a little crazy. So we can turn these numbers way down. All right, and we're getting a little bit of motion blur there. And all I'm doing is kind of fine tuning this to get something that we sort of like. I don't think we need too much scale on the Y. And then from here, we can just kind of refine this to get what we want. Let me go forward to make sure the motion blur isn't affecting the rest of the frame. And really, we just kind of want this beginning part to have a bunch of motion blur. This camera movement is a little slower, so we don't need a lot there. And then we should have some motion blur right at the end here. Yeah, there you go. It's picking up a little bit. And again, this Y scale might be a little much. And basically I'm just massaging this until I kind of get something that I think will work. Okay. All right, so for now, I'm gonna leave the background on and let's start getting some of our compositing elements in here to get some nice blowing snow happening. All right, so let's jump back into Blender. And I already have some nulls in here of where I know I want some dust and atmosphere and some of the blowing snow happening. So I have a null, and let's jump out of this camera. So I have a null right here to get an idea of where these mountains are. And I put a null in front so we can have some foreground snow blowing in. And I have a null in the back here to kind of give some more little atmosphere. And this is really simple to do. All I did is I kind of figured out a point of where I wanted. So let's say we want something right on the top here actually. I just held Shift, right click to get our 3D cursor there, and then Shift A and typed in empty. And I just did something like empty arrow. So we kind of know that's where the tip of that mountain is when we get back in our camera view here. And inside here, I made a little AE Nulls folder. Also hit F2 to rename this, call this top of mountain. And the easy way to do this is using the AE to Blender add-on. So we just want to make sure Blender AE2 is installed. And just remember, if you're using 4.0 and above, you are going to find it in preferences and your extensions. And this will be for 2.0.3 at the time of recording. If you have it in your add-ons, it will not work in version 4.3 and higher, or it might be 4.0 and higher. All right, so let's bring up Blender AE. We're gonna have some options here, and the majority of this we can just leave at default. But what I'm gonna do, hit Shift A twice here to close all that, is I saved all my nulls in a folder here so I can just keep track of where everything is. And I'm also going to grab our camera. So with all that information and After Effects with our project file still open, I'm just gonna say export data to AE. And you'll see it's working there, it's thinking. And we know that our layers are getting set up in After Effects, and After Effects popped open. It created a composition for me, and it's bringing all that information into our composition. So you'll notice that it brought in duplicates of everything, and that's only because these layers were from the actual project, but these are layers that we just brought in. And we'll see that everything is moving in 3D space. We got our camera and it's all working. So I'm just gonna make these, let's just make them green for now so we can remember which ones they are. I'm gonna copy them. I'm gonna go into our tutorial composition and I'm gonna paste that so we have it in 3D space. Okay, now let's move on to getting some of our smoke and dust elements. And there are a ton of resources online that you can use for this. My favorite, that's just been an awesome company to work with and lots of amazing assets, is I've been using aejuice.com and their plugin for After Effects. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna bring in our AE Juice Pack Manager 4, and I'm just gonna dock into our main window right now, and you'll see there is a ton of assets that we can bring right into After Effects, film noise, all kinds of stuff to composite with, or even just, you know, transitions, lower thirds, all that good stuff. They even have some free stuff you can look at to start get going, and you can check out some of their VFX assets. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna look for, well, one of the things you can just type in here and it'll search some of the stuff for you. Like we have, if we just type in fog, we get some idea of some fog. We have a little transition here of what some of that stuff will look like. Oh, that could have been like a cool avalanche. You know, you get nice little preview of some of the stuff. We might actually use some of this element, but I know somewhere they have, oh yeah, here we go. There's snow falling elements, but the ones I'm probably the most interested in, maybe we'll use some of this. I really like this snowstorm blizzard, and these elements are gonna work great. Let's go ahead and we're gonna download the preview elements in the background, and then we'll have access to all the thumbnails, and then we can decide which high-res ones we wanna bring into After Effects. All right, and once that downloads, we're able to get a preview of what some of these snow elements are looking like. And you know, it's all separated up into categories. So we're able to kind of get a look at all of these different elements, which is nice and easy to kind of figure out elements. Let me increase the size of this a little bit so we can see our previews. And even just some of these snowy peak elements I'm absolutely loving. So let's go ahead, let's try downloading this one and see how we feel about this one. And when I hit download, this is going to get brought right in this composition. Just gonna click download in the background while we look at some other ones. Maybe we can use some of these sort of drifty ones. Let's just download it anyways. Some of these blowing snow ones are pretty cool. I like the sideways ones the most probably. Oh man, some of these other super snowy peak ones are cool too. And these are definitely cool, but they might be a little too foggy. I'm just gonna keep looking through some of these and see if any of these might work for a midground element. All right, we got our snow and fog elements in here. Can't really see anything right now, but let's go ahead and turn some of these off and let's just sort of see which ones we're liking. All right, so I'm really curious about this mountain peak one, which I'm really digging. This one's the heavy one. This is the more misty one. I really like these little particles, so let's start with this one. Go back to our main composition. And what we're gonna need to do is put it on that null that was on the top of the mountain, which is back here. Let's just copy this position. We're gonna take our drift layer. Right now it's a 2D layer. Turn over to 3D layer. Who knows where it is right now. And I'm just going to paste that position in. And it's a little off, a little large. We'll kind of scale this to match a little bit. And honestly, I think I might want the snow going the other way. So I'm gonna hit the scale, just put a little minus here to invert it. And we don't need this to be perfect. We just kind of need it to get a sense of something that's happening. Rotate down a little bit, just kind of scale this into position a little bit. I think this will work lined up to our peak. Maybe I'll move it back a little bit. But obviously, as we can tell, we got some issues and we need to get it behind the challenge sign and all that good stuff. So what we'll just do is we're just going to go ahead and use another crypto mat in front here as our matted layer. We'll add the crypto mat effect again. And with it selected, we're going to kind of just select all these items that we want behind. This has a little bit of an edge selected here, so I'll make sure we get that edge. And let's make sure we get that sign. And we'll have it on the front of this mountain. But remember, we have a wipe in here as well. So on top of this mountain, I'm going to select this layer and we'll see if this has any issues with the back here. There should be the wipe out mountain as well. And this turn might give us some problems, but you know, this will be so fast with motion blur, we can figure it out. So I'm going to change this to matte only. And we got our snowdrift layer. So I'll make this a Luma matte of layer 5 with that crypto matte we just selected. We'll invert it. Let's turn off the background and see what we got. All right, so we'll kind of solo this, take a look at it. We're going to use this as our matte. And we might actually need to bring in one more mount for the transition. Let's just double check. Yeah, so this mountain right here should also be white. Just gonna make sure I select it. That should bring in the transition. Even though some of this drift is hidden behind our main logo, I think we'll still get a sense of what the background looks like. Let's just do a quick RAM preview and see what this looks like. All right, cool. So we got a little bit of a drift on our mountain. We could probably bump this up a little bit and tweak it just so it's a little brighter and we could maybe see if that works. Let's just try that really quick. That's not looking too bad. It might be a little bit too bright, but once we get kind of the grading, we'll see what happens. I'm definitely noticing that at the end here, you know, our stock footage isn't long enough. We need 720 frames. So let's go ahead and just make this a quick and simple loop, just doing some cross dissolves. So I just brought the footage in its own composition, make this 800 frames just to be safe. And I'm just going to do a simple slide over because I have a feeling there might be a jump. Yeah, there's a jump in the footage. So we'll just do a little bit of a cross dissolve to bring that in. Maybe we'll dissolve it over about 2 seconds. And no one will be the wiser. We could probably also fade this one down a little bit as well. Just reverse the keyframes. And we'll just repeat the process a couple more times to extend it out over the duration of this. The ending here doesn't matter as much because we're going to have that fast transition loop out that's going to go right back to frame 1. So with this now, we should be able to extend this out. And let's go ahead and just give this the same green color so we know it's one of our footages. And let's repeat the process for a foreground layer right here that's in front of our logo to give it a little bit more atmosphere. All right, so I searched around a little bit more to kind of find a better foreground element. And I think I'm going to try and go with this Drifting Snow 01. We'll throw that in the foreground for now and we'll just kind of see how it feels, and we can always switch it out later. So we'll go ahead and turn it on, make a 3D layer. Let's find that front null again really quick, which was right here. Copy the position. Let's go back over to the Drifting Snow. And we're just going to paste it in. It's pretty big and we have that kind of weird angle again. So let's just quickly rotate this back into position. And because I want to match the wind, let's go ahead and rotate it around. All right. And I see a couple of issues we have with the sides here. So, just to kind of get it in here, we can scale it up a little bit. Maybe mask it off a little bit on the edges. Make this a little smaller. And we'll just feather it out. Make sure we don't have any of those hard edges. And let's get a RAM preview of this and see what this one's looking like. All right, cool. So we got some foreground elements happening. We're going to do the same thing, going to pre-compose it, and we need to make a small loop out of it so it goes for the duration of our camera move. And then I'm going to do the same process to add a little bit of atmosphere in the background, and then we can move on to the next step. All right, now that we have this in a loop, it's getting pretty far around the corner here, but right about here, I want to add one more layer, and we're going to rotate this towards the camera again. And we'll just sort of rotate this and orient it so it's a little bit more straight on. Let's go to our top view really quick. And I just want to bring this over a little bit. Just so it's a little bit in front of the camera as it makes its final turn here. And this should give it enough parallax and effect that it feels like it's coming on and off. One thing I do want to add for both of these though, I'm just going to rotate and scale this up a little bit more so we get a little bit as it goes around the corner here. All right, so we got some mountain snow and some foreground snow. I might want a little bit of atmosphere and dust back here, so I'm going to repeat this process for the back. All right, cool. So we're kind of bringing our 3D render to life a little bit. I think the next thing I want to do now is, I think we're good on the snow. Might be worth tweaking that in the long run. I really like how it's blowing off of the mountain. I think it looks cool, and maybe a little bit more of that would be great on some of the foreground, the other mountains, but we can tweak all that stuff another time. So let's move on to maybe the other thing I want to add is maybe just a little bit of a sun flare on this, just to give a little bit more of natural elements to it. And since we have the camera, we can have it follow that. And so maybe we'll just add a quick little optical flare. So I'm going to add a new solid layer. We'll call this flare. And to that, we're going to add optical flares. And we get our default flare here, and we want to find something a little more natural. So once I have optical flares, I did go ahead and make a custom flare so you don't have to see all that. And basically all I did is add a little bit of these nice sunspots and a little bit of the lens smudge for on top of the lens. And this will kind of be a different scale once we get back into it, and you'll see how it sort of works out, and then we'll blend it in a little bit more. But basically it's just a multi-iris and a little bit of lens texture. So let's hit OK on that. The scale right now is pretty small. So right now the positioning mode is on 2D. Let's go ahead and set this to 3D. And this way it'll follow the camera a little bit. And I did go ahead and offset it a little bit. I want these sunspots to be a little higher though. So maybe we can do something like a scale of 250. And this is all just a personal taste, however you want to do it. One of the things we can do is set this back to transparent. And just so the flare blends a little bit, let's set this to screen. And we do have it on this left position, so we're kind of matching the sunlight a little bit. And if I solo that, we can see that this is following our camera, and we just get a little bit of a sun flare in there. All right, cool. So I kind of just like how that's brightening up one side of the frame and giving a little bit of elements on there. The last thing I went ahead and added just a little bit of a blur to kind of soften that up. Okay, so now looking back at it, taking a second look, we need some contrast, and I think we're ready to move into the next video, which will be doing some color grading, which will also have some film effects like some film grain and some bloom and halation, and kind of be those final touches to give our CG elements a little bit of a less CG feel. So that's in the next video. I will see you guys in the next one.